Thank you for that introduction. My name is Adam Smith. I'm one of the founding shareholders of Oroco, also one of the largest 3 shareholders. Oroco is a Vancouver-based company with a large asset in Mexico. We first entered Mexico in 2006. We subsequently defined a gold and silver resource in northern Sinaloa state. We took it to turnkey, we sold it to another mining company to put it in production, and we continue to receive royalties on that. The project that we're now focused on is also in Mexico. It straddles the states of Sinaloa and Chihuahua, and it's at a historic, sorry, I have to figure out how to use this. It's a historic copper resource established through decades of exploration. But first, a little bit about the company. We've got 193 million shares outstanding. We trade on the TSX Venture. Our market cap is presently approximately 430 million Canadian dollars. And we have a board made up of established exploration and development personnel with histories at major mining companies. The significance of the history at majors is that our game plan, our business plan, is to develop Santo Tomas to the point that it is attractive in an M&A transaction to a major mining company. Santo Tomas represents a very rare opportunity to invest in a large copper asset. By large copper asset, I mean in excess of 4, 5, 6 million tons of contained copper. The number of similar assets in the hands of junior mining companies can be established at probably less than 5, less than 8 projects advanced this large and in a favorable environment for development. We've commenced exploration at Santo Tomas the beginning of last year. We did an advanced 3-dimensional induced polarization survey. I'll detail that in a subsequent slide. And it is strongly supportive of historical exploration results at Santo Tomas. We're located in a top-tier mining jurisdiction. Mexico is one of the top 5, top 8 mining jurisdictions in the world. And as I mentioned, the exit strategy for our investors, for ourselves, is an M&A transaction. The project is located superbly with respect to available infrastructure. We're 160 kilometers to a deep-water port. We're within 20 kilometers of a high-pressure gas pipeline that runs from Texas to the port of Topolobampo, and we're also within 20 kilometers of the Chihuahua Pacific Railway. Very important elements for the development of a mine which will ultimately be producing approximately 500,000 tons per year of copper concentrate. Again, top 5 jurisdiction. Our experience there since 2006 has been superb. We built, developed, sold 1 mine already, and we've just had a great experience in a country that, and we can back up Barry Dolbear's conclusion that Mexico is a member of the top 5, the endurable top 5, as they call it. So what is our asset? Santo Tomas was discovered in the 1960s. It was drilled successively to the 1990s. By 1994, it was established as a significant resource. Circa 7 million tons of contained copper, which, to put that in perspective, is approximately 70 billion US dollars of contained metal at today's price. That resource was established with the completion of 100 drill holes. Concurrent with that, there was extensive metallurgical testing done at Santo Tomas. Simple, clean concentrate produced after high recoveries from a simple bucket, shovel, and flotation process. So a very standard process, nothing special about Santo Tomas. It's a classic porphyry copper deposit. Bateman Engineering and subsequent work by Barry Dolbear established no design risks. So again, very simple process, easy access to infrastructure, no complexities. Bateman Engineering concluded, quite importantly as well, that the resource at Santo Tomas is likely to increase with additional drilling. That's as a function of the fact that the original drill holes did not fully define the deposit. They didn't find the edges of it. They were relatively shallow at a maximum depth of 350 meters. So we commenced exploration at Santo Tomas almost 2 years ago, after an extended period of legal title dispute at the property. The reason why there's a gap between 1994 and 2 years ago is because the owner, a Mexican national, had got into a dispute over the project's ownership with some prospective buyers almost 20 years ago. He asked for our assistance in establishing clean title, establishing his contractual rights to ownership of the property, and we did that over an extended period of time, almost 11-year legal battle. So that's how an asset as big as Santo Tomas could go fallow for almost 2 decades. Once legal title was fully and finally resolved, we commenced exploration activities at the project, initially with the 3-dimensional induced polarization survey. The results were extremely positive. They backed up Barry Dolbear and Bateman Engineering's conclusions that the project would expand with additional exploration and drilling. You can see the dark red shape there was established through the drill program up to 1994. The larger colored shapes around it are the 3D induced polarization indication of additional mineralization. So significant growth potential at an already very large copper resource. There's another more graphic indication of the potential to expand Santo Tomas. In the center, you have contained within 2 conceptual pits approximately 1.4 billion tons of copper ore, containing almost 5 million tons of copper metal. The larger red shape is the 3D induced polarization survey's indication of additional mineralization at Santo Tomas. So it's clearly not constrained to the north, to the south at depth, and you can't tell from this image, but to the west as well. The work that Oroco commenced, the drilling that Oroco commenced rather, in June of last year are these long diagonal holes. The vertical holes are the historical drilling at Santo Tomas. You can see relatively shallow at a maximum depth of 350 meters, with a great many of them ending in copper mineralization. We will drill deeper into the structure, which is a dipping 55-degree structurally controlled slab of mineralization. Clearly, it extends deeper than the historical drills established, and between now and, say, the end of 2022, we should start to get an idea of just how big Santo Tomas is going to get. We raised in the last 18 months about 35 million Canadian dollars, so we have a fairly generous treasury in regards to drilling costs and runway for a drill program. And I expect, as I say, by the end of this year, we should have a very good sense for just how big Santo Tomas is going to get. Copper. The copper story, I'm sure you've heard many, many times over, but it's absolutely worth repeating that copper demand, as you can see the dark blue line here, is expected to increase very significantly at a time in history when the world's largest copper producers, the world's largest copper mines, the big porphyry deposits that supply most of the world's copper, are aging, they're in decline, the grade's dropping, and we expect, therefore, large gaps to appear between copper demand and copper supply from the historical existing copper mines. Those mines, those additional projects which are on deck to meet future demand, quite simply won't meet future copper demand. Large gaps, large deficits are currently forecast, to the point where by the end of this decade, by 2030, an 8 million ton per annum copper deficit is forecast. 8 million tons of copper is the equivalent of 40 or 50 mines as large as Santo Tomas. And the world quite simply does not have 40 or 50 mines to put into production, to production over the next decade. Subsequent decades, the story becomes even more dramatic in favor of those assets such as, or those companies that own assets such as Santo Tomas. So what's the significance of that for us? Obviously higher copper prices going forward, or at least higher lows going forward, making the planning of projects like Santo Tomas a more straightforward enterprise. But our goal is not to operate Santo Tomas as a mine, it's to sell the asset to a major mining company in an M&A transaction. Over the last decade, the potential buyers of assets like Santo Tomas have had very good operating years. They're in much better financial shape than they were during the last copper bull market. Many of them have diminished copper pipelines, diminished pipelines of projects to put into production to meet future demand, and a number of them will therefore have to engage in M&A, in acquisition of copper assets, in order to stay in the business. However, in a thorough study in 2018, London-based RFC Ambrian looked at the landscape. They looked at the number of projects available for acquisition, projects that met certain size thresholds, that had ownership structures that were amenable to the sale of the asset, that exist in jurisdictions where the development of these large assets is feasible. They concluded that the number of likely candidates that fit that description is limited to just 5. And you contrast that number 5 to the number of assets that need to go into production to meet future demand, which is 50, 60, 70, 80 such deposits. And you can see where the advantage lies for companies like ourselves. So they stated the lack of opportunity looks set to raise the stakes for those assets that are available. And indeed, since then, we've seen valuations in the copper space rise. We've seen the price of copper rise. And all of those circumstances that Ambrian suggested were relevant in 2018 are just stronger today. So quite simply, when M&A starts, when copper assets like ours reach a state that they're de-risked sufficiently to be considered M&A targets, the market is going to become very, very interesting. RFC Ambrian did some studies. They did a study in the 2018 study included a section that looked at average prices paid in M&A transactions over the prior decade, during which copper per pound averaged about $3. They applied that metric to their estimates of how large we will grow the asset at Santo Tomas. They gave some price targets. Their favorite estimate is that Santo Tomas will grow between 3 and 4 times. Using the backward-looking 9-cent per pound valuation, or rather average price paid for copper assets, they estimated a share price for Oroco at takeover of between $8.66 and $11.55 dollars Canadian. Contrast that with our current market price of about $2.20, and you can see that there's a very significant delta there, very significant opportunity for investors. And in a nutshell, that's what we're here to offer, a strategic investment in a very important metal, in a rising market, and an M&A, a prospective M&A transaction that could be very rewarding to shareholders.